This is problem 8-14 from section 8.1.1. Sketch the graph of each equation below. This is something we've been really focusing on in chapter 7, finding the amplitude, period, phase shift, and vertical shift for these things. So I'm going to do identify those things first, and then we will graph the function. Okay, amplitude is always the number in front of sine, or cosine if it was that. Amplitude, in this case, it's a 1. Period is where I set the stuff with the x equal to the typical period. 2 pi x equals typical period is 2 pi, so that means x is going to be 1. So that means our period length is 1. Now we're not talking about radians anymore, we're just talking about units, and it's a 1. Phase shift, if there was anything else in the parentheses, there isn't one. Vertical shift would be the outsides, plus or minus on the end, and there is none. So that makes this one pretty nice and easy. I'm going to start at 0, there's no phase shift, and I'm going to end where my period is over, which is 1. Right? Half of that would be 1/2, half of that would be 1/4, this is going to be 3/4. Alright, and then we're going to have this part up here, our y-axis. Since our amplitude is just 1, this would be 1, this we'll call it -1, and I'm going to use, let's use green to graph it. So normally sine starts at 0, 0, then it's going to go up, 0, down, 0. So here's our graph. Since the only change was a period change, that was affected by the rewriting of the x-axis. Now if you are drawing it a little bit differently, again, this one, the phase shift, there is no phase shift, so your graph should look the same even if you were physically moving it left and right. So part B, y equals 3 sine of pi x. Amplitude is going to be a 3, the number in front of it. Period, I'm going to take that pi x and set it equal to the normal period of sine, which is 2 pi. Okay, solve for x. So our period length is now 2. Okay, if I go back, find the phase shift, there's nothing else in the parentheses with it, so there's none, and there's nothing on the end. So there's also no phase shift, and there's no vertical shift. Okay, so I'm going to start at 0, since there is no phase shift, and I'm going to end at the length of the period, which is 2. So now this will be a 1, this will be a 1/2, this will be a 3/2. Okay, now my amplitude is changed to be 3. So instead of calling that 1 and -1, I'm just going to call it 3 and -3. Okay, you can also actually physically draw all the little things in there. So normally this was a sine equation, correct? Yes, they're all three of them are sine. So I'm going to start at 0, 0, up, 0, down, and -3, up. So make sure your amplitude is 3 on both directions between the midline. This is 3 and this is 3. Last equation, part C, we have y equals 2 sine of 2 pi x plus 1. So we know amplitude is 2. I'm going to do the vertical shift is going to be a positive 1. There's no phase shift. There's nothing else in the parentheses. And in the parentheses, we had 2 pi x. So that was the same thing that we had right here. Okay, so my period is going to be 1. You would set 2 pi x equal to 2 pi. Ooh. So if I solve for x there, I'm going to get x equals 1. So that's my period length. So there's no phase shift, which is again nice. I'm going to start at 0. I end where my period ends, which is 1. Now I have an amplitude of 2. So I'm going to do the amplitude first, separately. And then I'm going to come back and do the vertical shift, because that's the way that I kind of like to set it up. You may do it all at once. That is totally up to you. As long as you're getting the correct graph from the end is what counts. So this is sine, so normally start at 0, 0. I'm going to make it go up at 2, down. Okay, so here is my one with just the amplitude and the period change. Now I'm going to add in my vertical shift, which means everything needs to move up 1. So this is now going to move up to 1. This moves up to 3. This moves up to 1. This moves up to -1. Always good to label everything. and this moves up to positive 1. So now in the red is my final graph of part C. I have an amplitude change, period change, and a vertical shift. No phase shift. So all of these should start at 0, 0. If you're not sure on graphing these trig functions, we did spend a lot of time on that. I would highly recommend seeing your teacher because these will be on your final exam as well as they were on the Chapter 7 test.